But one of the questions I had watching this unfold this morning is why the justices are taking
Supreme Court have had in these cases. This is something that is historic. It will be studied, especially we don't know how the story ends. It will be studied for decades to come.
Absolutely. And Shan, I mean, just like this case, the immunity question is something that the Supreme Court could have said, oh, no, we're not taking that up.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a very strong case for them just letting it stand because the D.C. Circuit did a very thorough opinion. I mean, it seems to me it's a bit of an ego issue that they felt they really had to weigh in on it because it's historic. But legally, there was not a reason to do that. And the court historically has tried not to exercise its jurisdiction when it doesn't have to, and it didn't have to do that here.
Unless they want to send it back down, which is what I'm told by sources close to the case. There's a thought that maybe they want to send it back down for further proceedings on a more narrow definition of immunity, which means more interesting constitutional questions, but also more delays.
It also means probably no January 6th case before the election.
That is
for all intents and purposes. All right, Paula, Shan, thank you so much. Busy morning. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. I'm Jim Acosta. Our next hour of Newsroom with Wolf Blitzer starts right now. Have a great day, everybody.
Happening now, day 2 of jury selection in Donald Trump's criminal trial in New York. After no jurors were seated on day 1, we're live outside the courthouse. Plus, oral arguments are underway right now at the United States Supreme Court with huge implications for hundreds of January 6th rioters, how this potentially could impact special counsel Jack Smith's case against Donald Trump as well. And a U.S. official tells CNN that Israel's response to Iran's attacks will be, quote, limited in scope. Details on what that could mean and when it could happen. Hello, I'm Wolf Blitzer in Washington, and you're in the CNN Newsroom.
This is CNN Breaking News.
We begin this hour in New York. Potential jurors are packed into a Manhattan courtroom once again as the search continues for 12 men and women, plus 6 alternates, to hear the historic criminal case against Donald Trump. He's accused of falsifying business documents to hide hush money paid to an adult film star over an alleged affair. CNN anchor and chief legal analyst Laura Coates is live outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan for us. Laura, tell us what's going on.
Thanks, Wolf, and good morning. It's another historic day, day 2 of jury selection of the very first time that an American president, a former president, has been charged criminally and now will sit for a trial that he long tried to avoid. We're now in day 2 of jury selection. I'm here now with correspondents Kara Scannell and Kristen Holmes. Kara, to you first. Catch us up on what's been happening right now, because we are in day 2. The motion practice largely ended yesterday, although there were some things. Now you have jurors who are answering questions.
We're in the heart of this jury selection process here, and they're still trying to get to the point where they fill the jury box with enough that they could really drill down into their questions. So what we've seen today is, yesterday we got up to 9 in that box. Now today, through some of the questioning, just going through the regular questionnaire, we're finding that some of the jurors are saying, hey, now I can't be fair and impartial. Others are saying they've been excused because they have a scheduling conflict. I mean, one juror said that, she works for a cybersecurity firm, thought that, her job would take up most of her ability to focus, but then also said that she did, at one point in the past, subscribe to some social media posts that were anti-Trump. So, this is part of the process. We're also learning about some of these jurors and who they are. I mean, there's a bookseller who's sitting in the jury right now. There's also a prosecutor in the Bronx district attorney's office who's still in the jury. Now, these people could end up getting excused at some point, but, we just kind of get a sense of who's in there now, and that includes, a lawyer, a prosecutor, a bookseller, an oncology nurse, really kind of a cross-section of Manhattan.
Interesting, because people might think when you're in the box right now that they're already going to be the people who are doing it, but really they're going to be filtered into the courtroom. Those are going to sit into the actual jury box as we come to know it, right? And then as you're being asked questions, will come in and out depending on what questions you actually answer that indicate bias or not. So right now we've got people in the box, but no one officially a juror on this case. Kristen, when you look at this, and of course there was one juror who was excused already for having a pro-Trump bias, it seemed. That must be very frustrating for the Trump team.
Yeah, of course, because they didn't even know if they were going to get anyone that was pro-Trump. They have been very concerned about the political makeup of Manhattan, worried that they were not going to get anyone who could be sympathetic to Donald Trump. But to your point about whether or not these jurors are going to eventually sit on the actual jury, I mean, we just saw one man who has not been ruled out. He answered all the questions, but he said that his main news intake was MSNBC and Huffington Post. That might be something that Donald Trump's team takes issue with. They are going to go through each part of this questionnaire really with a fine-tooth comb to try and make sure that these people are not people who would necessarily want to rule against Donald Trump because of their political beliefs or because of what kind of news information that they take in. Again, when we talk about overarching, what are they trying to get out of this? There's not a lot of optimism, once again, that they are going to win this outright, but they are still trying to get at least one sympathetic juror to Donald Trump to try and aim for this potential hung jury.
Remember the monotony of the jury selection process. I mean, this is going to take some time, and we already saw some of the color in the courtroom with Trump, his eyes closed periodically, watching each juror as they're walking from the well of the courtroom up into this jury box, trying to, I'm sure, establish some sort of rapport from across the room or understand who this person is. This is going to be a very long process for him to try to endure, but also him trying to endure it and be quiet according to the gag order. That might be a challenge. We already know there's motions happening right now, continuing, about whether he has in fact violated it. Why is there now a Tuesday hearing next week for that, as opposed to dealing with it right now?
Well, the judge is giving them time to put together their legal arguments because jury selection is taking up a lot of the lawyers' time. And even though Trump does have a big legal team, this is an important issue. And, his lead attorneys are very focused right now on jury selection. So the judge is giving them some time. There's no court tomorrow. They'd have the weekend. But in order to build up their case of why Trump shouldn't be held in contempt for violating that gag order, because a lot of the focus of today, is to select this jury. Like we've been talking about, this is the most important decision in this case for Donald Trump right now, is to feel that he has a jury that he can be comfortable with. He sat through jury selection in the civil case, the E. Jean Carroll defamation case. That was a lot quicker. The different judge, different process. It was just one day, but Trump was very actively involved. He was leaning to look at the jurors as they were talking. As we've seen today and yesterday, he's following along at times in the questionnaire. It does get tedious in there. You're going going through this, but you're also getting to know who these people are and trying to see how they react to him. You know, if someone is acting hesitant or not willing to look around, that can give his team some clues that maybe this is someone they need to probe further on. You know, but there's so much that you can glean just from being in the room and witnessing this, and that is why, you know, the judge is telling Trump he has to be here, and that is why we're seeing Trump, you know, at times seeming to pay a lot of attention.
It's interesting, too, because you're going to have an unnatural environment in many respects, even for the prosecution and defense, when you have the presence of, say, a former president, that it might throw off someone's body language. They may act unnaturally in a way that make you think you know what they're thinking, and they're not, in fact, thinking these very things. You know, also, I want you, if you have any questions about the trial, by the way, out there, I know many of you do, as you're leaning into all of this historic coverage, just go to CNN.com/Trump trial questions. Just type in your question there, and then we'll reach out to have you call in on my show tonight, Laura Coates Live at 11 p.m. to answer your questions. Wolf, let's go back to you.
I'll be watching for sure, Laura. Thank you, and thank the team as well in New York for some more analysis. I want to bring in CNN senior political analyst Gloria Borger, along with David Urban. David is a Republican strategist and was a Trump campaign senior advisor. Gloria, Trump spoke outside the court this morning, slamming the judge, slamming the trial, and he also had this to say about the criminal charges that have been leveled against him. Listen.
I was paying a lawyer and marked it down as a legal expense. Some accountant, I didn't know, marked it down as a legal expense. That's exactly what it was. And you get indicted over that?
He says some accountant marked it down as a legal expense.
I'm not quite sure what he's talking about. I mean, some accountant. Who was the accountant? I mean, we know that it was payments to Stormy Daniels. It wasn't expense. It wasn't to Michael Cohen for his work. It was, you know, Michael Cohen was the intermediary on this. Look, I think every day, in every way, Donald Trump is trying to exert some control over this process, which he has no control over. And the only way he can do that is by claiming before he goes into court and as he exits court that he's innocent. And otherwise, he has to sit there all day and try and figure out who's going to be on the jury and basically say nothing.
Yeah. And among other things, David, Trump continues to repeat his totally baseless claim that the Biden White House orchestrated this case. Is this an effective general election campaign message?
You know, I think that overall, right, writ large, that's the kind of the theme here, the lawfare theme of trying to keep Trump off the ballot via, you know, court maneuvers. I think what would be more effective, perhaps in this case, is an argument about the district attorney here, because this is a state level brought by the district attorney in this case, Alvin Bragg. And maybe the former president should have said something to the effect that in 2022, Alvin Bragg downgraded 52% of felony cases to misdemeanors. And in my case, he elevated a misdemeanor claim to a felony. That would probably been a good argument to make, because that's actually factually true. And people can kind of stir on that and debate that.
He's not doing that.
Yeah, he's not doing that. And then to your point about whether this is, and to further explain, this is, you know, Michael Cohen paid this payment out. It got logged in a book as a legal payment, and I'm being, you know, tried as a criminal here because it got logged as a legal payment versus a business expense. And if you really just laid those out for the American people, I think you'd be doing much better off, because, you know, AP Norc poll came out today and said 1 in 3 Americans believe, only 1 in 3 Americans believe that Trump did something wrong here. This is a bad trial for lots of reasons. I remember sitting back when Alvin Bragg brought this case, and everyone kind of wrung their hands and said, "Oh, we have all these January 6 cases, these serious cases that need to be heard, and they're not going to get heard, and instead this terrible case is going to get heard." And one person is all it's needed to have a, you know, not guilty or a hung jury here, and then Donald Trump will you know, emerge jubilant from this courtroom.
Well, I think that's what they're looking for, right? I mean, they're drawing from a dark blue pool there in Manhattan, and what they're looking for is that one person, maybe it was the person that was eliminated, who could be on Donald Trump's side and could hold out, because of course the jury verdict has to be unanimous. And so what his attorneys are looking for is that one independent person who might be able to stand up to a jury who wanted to convict Donald Trump. And that's, you know, that's not easy. A lot of this is, you know, playing with smoke and mirrors and trying to figure out who this person is.
That's why that jury selection process is underway right now.
It's difficult.
Day 2 is so sensitive and so important to see if they can get fair and impartial jurors
And well,
together.
can you imagine sitting there as a juror, potential juror, looking across 10 feet away as the former president of the United States? It's got to be a surreal experience for the jurors who, when they get their number pulled and they show up at the courthouse, they don't exactly know what they're going to be in, and then they find out they're in this trial. Some of them, I'm sure, want to participate. Some, I'm sure, don't want to participate for all the reasons that go along with it. This will either haunt you, right, as for the rest of your life if you don't want to be in this jury. Some people want to serve and will do it. So it's very weighty. And to your point, Gloria, this is beyond a reasonable doubt. This is a big lift. It's not like the E. Jean Carroll case, which is a civil case, mere preponderance of the evidence. This is beyond a reasonable doubt. Much higher standard. It's